Stream started.
Yeah.
Okay, so just, Quinn, do your thing for a second.
Just do my thing. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good chapter. I liked it. Um, Leviathan. He's a really cool concept, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, really interesting enemy, like what he actually, like, does and is, in
yeah,
a
like I
fight.
had to kind of read his after image thing a few times. I was like, wait, so I was like, is there two of him or like how is this working?
Right, and he's, like, launching water all over. Like, that's pretty much what
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, I can't imagine anything like that in the real world if we had to deal with that.
Yeah. Oh, Vale's here, saying hi. I've got the speed
Hello,
draw
Bill.
going uh, on the other screen. We can see it's Shielder from the section of the chapter where he puts up his shield bubble during the first tsunami.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if I've seen the art for this one yet, so I'm gonna
Yeah, I showed
look
you the
that.
one for 8.4, but I didn't actually show you this one. Vale says, such glorious artwork.
As always.
Mm-hmm. Um,
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah. I think it's a really good design, and as you noticed while reading the chapters, this is the last chance we get to see this character. So
Yeah, the last chance we get to see a lot of characters.
yeah, and like I don't know, I think there's something to this moment. Like this guy gets murked in a minute, but he saves Taylor's life.
Yeah, yeah.
So um and like part of what drains his reserves is the fact that Leviathan like just speed swims, causing all the water in the area to get churned up, and kind of like that grates against the shield and wears him out. So
Yeah.
he's just like passively, by being nearby and like swimming around, able to cause all this destruction without even like directly striking anything.
Vale
Yeah.
says Arms Master loses an arm, Shielder loses a shield.
True. True.
Yeah,
Um
there were a lot of times where I was like, oh man, I was that's a cool character. Like I love this character that's dead. I was like, oh no, it's okay. We still got this one. Oh, they're dead.
yeah. To remind about the audience participation question, it is, which flying cape in attendance to this fight would you most want to see flying Skitter around? Since the 8.4 chapter ends with her waiting for a flyer. And so we'll mull that over. I think there's a lot of funny options, so um but then themes, Quinn had come up with two here. Vale says, my answer is so perfect it might intimidate others. Well, I'll say my dumb answers and then read your answer. But do you want to talk about hopelessness for a sec for the themes?
Yeah. So yeah, as I was reading it, I Taylor, obviously, or Skitter, I guess, her power felt very not effective in this fight, which usually her power is very strong. So her kind of being in this state where suddenly she's not super powerful or able to, I mean, she can still use it, but it's not it's not really the same because what's a swarm of bugs gonna do against Leviathan? So I kind of felt like a lot of hopelessness was on her part, where she was like, I don't know what to do. Like that's why she was kind of going around trying to help people because it was the best she could do.
Yeah. Oh, Greg just showed up.
Hello, Greg.
Um, I for sure agree with that. And then your other one was loss, and I kind of feel like hopelessness and loss, they are kind of two sides of the same coin in this case.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, Lost. That's kind of just self-explanatory. Just a lot of dead people.
Yeah. Exactly. Um, Vale says a wild Sigma jargon appears. Um, Yep. And then my next one was escalation of violence. And I mean, certainly, we ain't never seen a fight this crazy yet.
No, this was definitely like a kind of an eye opener for me. I was like, oh, I didn't think something like this was really gonna happen. Like I kind of thought they were gonna like slowly kill off, a bunch of characters, but they just kind of were like,
This
oh,
is
let's just kill a lot of them in one fight.
this is like that whole scene in Invincible at the end of season or episode 1 where they're like, "Surprise, bitches" or whatever. But then I think personally that this one works better because it was built up for longer. Kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, not to say that that's not a good gimmicky episode, because it does have a good, like, draw you in, and most people are like, okay, I'll watch more of this.
Yeah. Once I saw that, I was like, all right, you got me.
Yeah. I don't have that much more to say on the themes. We'll kind of just, well, I guess maybe I'm just gonna add compartmentalization. Um, uh, because she is able to fight really well and like just focus on exactly what she needs to do and not like freak out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So do you want to start us off or
Yeah. So this is 8.3 is kind of written by like Victoria and you together.
right?
So yeah, just so people know. Do you want me to just read this whole little chunk?
Yeah, I figured we gotta swap off one by one
Okay.
for now.
Let me move closer. Okay. So we're back in time at the start of the fight. In the middle of the battlefield, Taylor asks the armband to direct her to the wounded that she can help. In the time it took Taylor to decide to do that, 2 capes were killed and 3 more injured, enough to be considered down by the armband. She's somewhat surprised when it acknowledges her request. The armband shows a map with a red dot and an arrow compassing her towards a destination, which unfortunately is near Leviathan. Taylor hesitates as she watches Legend and Leviathan tussle. When Legend lands a successful hit, Taylor hurries to the injured person indicated on her armband.
Yeah, on her way, she passes a dying person, but moves on as she knows she can't help. She arrives to a teenage boy in the metal bird costume. The situation with Leviathan doesn't seem to be getting better, and Taylor hopes that the front line can hold together long enough to help Bird Boy.
Bird boy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Interspersed in Taylor's actions is the background noise of the fighting from the armband, of the fight from the armband, the stuff she sees in the periphery of what she's doing. Legend is interrupted from hounding Leviathan for a moment, and he's able to kill someone and knock down another. She estimates she's close enough he could get her in one leap, but it wasn't worth dwelling on. She's able to use her maximum compartmentalization skills to
Yeah.
use right now to keep herself on track with the rescue.
Yeah. Um. And then he asks Bird Boy over there asks Taylor to help him stand, and she sees that his left leg was destroyed from the knee down. She heaves him up with his arm over her shoulder, and the pair retreat. As they walk, they have a few flyers and teleporters pulling other injured people from the ranks. Taylor wants to apologize that she can't help Bird Boy as much as these other capes, but thinks better of it. She finds it incredibly difficult supporting him and wading through the debris-filled water.
Yeah, and I think they even like say he's like because he's like wearing armor too, so that probably makes it like even harder.
Yeah, but as it's not noted here, but I actually bring it up a little later. She notes that he's lighter than she expected.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then there are a dozen or so capes fighting in close proximity to Leviathan, with a couple dozen more shooting at him, and a few dozen more kind of forming battle groups to engage him if he goes to other nearby areas, and to reinforce this fight as people get wiped out. A couple more heroes die, and another one gets knocked out.
And the one who gets knocked out like casually here as well, that's the guy that Taylor starts trying to give CPR to in a minute. Um,
Oh,
so
okay.
we sort of see the results as things go on. I didn't note that here, but I just remembered it. Um, but Alexandria and Leviathan. Oh, Greg said Legend doesn't get a hit. He's busy shooting lasers that curve around and strike Leviathan's. Yeah, it doesn't just get a hit. He's busy shooting lasers that curve around and strike Leviathan's back. It's pretty sweet. Yeah, yeah. Leviathan keeps like trying to move around and stuff, and the water echo is blocking some of the shots, but he just keeps moving and moving the where the lasers are coming. So he's always just direct firing on Leviathan.
Yeah.
And then it's when like Leviathan gets a like kind of a swipe at him that it knocks him off balance for a second, because even though Legend is crazy tough, Leviathan hits exceptionally hard. So but yeah, Alexandria and Leviathan start fighting. She ends up like putting him in a headlock and throwing him to the ground. Capes all around took the chance to retreat from Leviathan. Taylor feels some major imposter syndrome and wonders if everyone is feeling that way or if it's just the fact her power is really, really unhelpful in this fight.
Yeah, it was so rough just seeing Taylor because I don't know what you could do.
Right, right. And just by like being able to run around and have like kind of a cool head, then she's able to affect a small amount of positive change, and then like later on we obviously see what she can do. Ah,
Yeah.
2 plus 4 times 5 is here. Except
Huh.
currently in Costa Rica, so we'll only be here for a little while. That is fair
Ooh.
enough. When you leave the country, you gotta kind of maximize the time elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, you don't want to waste your time while you're there.
You can watch this
Um,
later.
exactly. But yeah, then a flyer lands next to the pair and takes Bird Boy off of Taylor's hands. Her armband flashes and points her to the next casualty. With a loud explosion from Dragon, have her turning back and notices Leviathan had been trying to drown Alexandria. Taylor watches him start to tear Dragon to bits before running off to her next target.
Yeah, and so Greg had joked Alexandria gives Leviathan a swirly. It all part of the bullying theme.
It all comes full circle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then oh, Greg says to enjoy the vacation, but Vale says that Costa Rica will be there forever, and this discussion will only happen once. Good point, Vale. Good.
Decisions.
Yeah.
That's funny.
We're here. She finds a woman in a white costume missing half of her face. Oof. Taylor jostles her to make sure she's awake, then realizes even if she is, she probably can't talk with her face in this condition. The woman is slightly responding to the waves around, but not Taylor's questions. She's apparently larger than Bird Boy, so Taylor can't lift her, and she realizes she didn't even bring first aid supplies. And this is where I had slightly countered to Vic's writing. Bird Boy might have had bird bones because Taylor described him as being below average in weight, despite the fact that he's wearing metal armor. Um, so that's why I thought that perhaps it's just a really light Bird Boy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't catch the part that he was like lighter or like lighter than average.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. But yeah, so Taylor searches her vicinity and spots what she's looking for. A cape making green exploding fireballs. She hurries over to him and is like, "Is your fire extra dangerous?" He's a bit weirded out. He's like, "It's fire." Taylor indicates to the woman and says that they need to cauterize the wound. Now the green fire cape is even more weirded out. When he tries to protest, Taylor tells him this is life or death and that her face is already destroyed from the wound. Victoria put this here. I really wonder if this lady survives the fight and what she thinks about Taylor's decision. He agrees, though not eagerly, and uses his power on her. Taylor holds the woman in position as she tries to squirm away.
She gets all squirmy.
That
Um,
sounds great.
and then Vic had said the pair pulls the woman into an alley, and the fire cape offers to stay with her as Taylor moves on. This is kind of silly because he was like sort of contributing to the fight, but whatever. And then
Yeah, I kind of thought that was silly.
but I have this counterpoint having sort of, I don't know, I guess more perspective on the story. That I thought to myself that when he stayed with the injured woman, this is probably a better use of his time than shooting flames at Leviathan. I kind of doubt that his flames were meaningfully contributing anything to the firepower against him.
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
Because, like, if they don't have some extra property, if they just explode, then, like, I don't know. It's kind of like a way worse version of Legend with collateral damage that you can't hit him from behind with.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And like also it's like Leviathan, so it's just like his after image could probably honestly just like block half of them if he really wanted to. So
Yeah, and like the fact that as we learn later, even when he is like as messed up as he's ever gonna get, uh fighting Arms Master, he still just doesn't care. He stands up and shrugs it off at the end, and he's like, "I'm not in pain.
he's like, yeah,
It's
that
fine."
wasn't pleasant, but
Yeah. So
um and oh yeah, we already did that. Oh, I'm getting lost. Some capes, too generic for Taylor to know, are fighting and seemingly distracting Leviathan for a moment to keep up the tempo, while the top tier capes catch their breath for a moment. We also get a great line here that's filled with dramatic irony, since the audience has already heard more about the nature of Leviathan's body in Lisa's interlude. The damage was superficial, only taking off slices of Leviathan's hide, but surely stripping away his hard exterior would help in the long run?
yeah, right. I mean, the whole like thing is he just works the opposite of how we would expect like almost anything else to work, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Vale says, chance of random passerby spilling scalding hot coffee on you listening to this at home near 0%. Walking around Costa Rica where scalding coffee is everywhere, almost certain. Yeah, if you go to Costa Rica, you will definitely get hot scalding coffee spilled on you. You heard it here from Vale.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's why I avoid that place.
Well, I mean, I would love to go there because it's beautiful, and I mean, they have a rich heritage, but I would just have too many burns on my skin.
Like I'd be too so like anxious of spilling hot coffee on me. I couldn't, you know.
I saw in Kanto, I saw those little kids running around just spilling coffee on everybody. Off we go to the next wounded, an obese armored cape who was already receiving CPR from someone. The CPR is insufficient, and clearly the cape performing it knows that. As soon as Taylor moves in, he leaves for her to take over. Taylor's annoyed.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, there was like that guy helping her or helping that person, and then once Taylor stepped in, he was like, "All right, see ya."
Time to run
Um,
back and shoot my shotgun at this guy more.
yeah, I got damage him more. At least by a flame or green fire
Oh
guy
my
was like,
god.
"Oh well, I could do this."
Oh my god. Greg is right. That was Colombia. Well, Colombia, Costa Rica, they're both, coffee famous. That is my bad. They do both start with C. Um, wow.
um,
I'm terrible.
but and then yeah, this is Taylor's first time giving like real CPR, and the combination of his size, his armor, and conditions make all of this much more difficult. Which CPR, I've never done it, but I imagine it's already fairly difficult. Plus, he had vomit on his mouth, mixing with the sea salt water, which makes it pretty gross. Uh, and something Vic wrote here was, if Wildbow comes back to this section, I'd def like some overview of how Taylor gives CPR, moving her mask up or what. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I think that he just didn't think about that too because her mask goes really far down, so it's like a pain in the ass to like lift up far enough to do something like CPR. Um,
Yeah, and
whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah, that's probably why.
Um, the man sputters and begins coughing up water, and Taylor helplessly continues watching the fight as he begins to hopefully recover. As Taylor CPRs, she's aware that Narwhal and Ballistic attack Leviathan, and at this point, he's bleeding from a large open wound. Miss Militia is bazookaing, and Crossbow Girl, who had been with Shadowstalker, was successfully cutting deep into Leviathan with her arrows. Taylor thinks to herself, "We're winning!" And in the words of Vic, think again, bitch.
Classic Victoria.
Yeah, Vale says Taylor gives CPR the same way she did for Clock Blocker in Arc 3. Spider plunger method. 2 plus 4 times 5 says, is Leviathan wet? One would
is
imagine.
is water wet? Um. Okay, and then Taylor's armband goes off, a warning indicating towards Leviathan. People start freaking out even more than they were, and force fields are going up. Shielder from New Wave calls for people to come to him, and Taylor sees that the man still isn't coming to. And I'm just going to read this quote. I gave the fat man one backwards glance and bolted for Shielder. I mouthed an apology. I didn't have the breath to utter. More for my conscience than for the man I hadn't saved.
At the last second, before the wave hit, Shielder throws up his bubble. Taylor sees a cape that just barely missed the force field get crushed up against it as they're hit by the water. Shielder falls to his knees, as seen in this image, with the effort of keeping his shield up. And then I think, do you want to read the chunk?
Yeah. Heavy casualties. Please wait. A chorus of identical voices announce, coming from the armbands of those 10 or 12 of us in the bubble, telling us that we'd just taken losses so heavy that the Dragon's computer system couldn't or wouldn't list them all. The water surging around us stopped abruptly, evaporated into a mist in a second swirling. The mist began drifting. Is it Mirden? Is that
Yep.
that guy's name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mirden working with Eidolon.
Eidolon, yeah.
And then, is it Eidolon?
Yeah, and like some people say it like Eidolon and stuff, but I usually say it Eidolon. Actually, you know what? I'll go with Eidolon. That's funny. So Eidolon used his power to turn the water to mist, and Mirden holds his staff up, forming the mist into a sphere. Taylor sees Leviathan leap up to a roof that she doesn't know Tattletale is on as he starts trashing the joint. Mirden launches the orb at Leviathan, and Leviathan is launched, crashing into the interior of another building. Vista's power warps the building, and the armbands tell them to depart the rooftops. Buildings may come down imminently. Oh, Greg's on my side here. Eidolon. There we go.
Eidolon. That's funny. Vista crumples the building onto Leviathan and turns to hug a ward next to her for comfort, as she had killed a cape that was near Leviathan in the process. Armsmaster begins commanding the troops, saying that Leviathan is going to try to escape to recover. Taylor is surrounded by the dead and mutilated in the water, and is aghast at the wreckage of the city that she can see. She realizes that the PHQ has also been destroyed. Why is this reminding me of like Metal Gear Solid 3, where you're walking through like the river, with like all the dead bodies?
Oh, I mean, I can see it evoking that. I almost thought you meant like in Metal Gear Solid 2 when they crashed the Metal Gear Arsenal into the Federal Building. It's funny that I am like immediately also thought of a different Metal Gear scene. But one thing that I guess I want to note here is that that person wanted her to collapse the building on him as like a big attack on Leviathan to like hit him really hard. But while it may have distracted him for a moment, it really probably did very little like damage to Leviathan at all, if any. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like dropping a building on him just doesn't. It's just not that big of a deal. Like this is a guy who's getting punched by Alexandria.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, oh, building, that's no big deal. Do they say like which cape it was, or is it just kind of like an unnamed cape?
It's Bastion. He had been the leader of one of the city teams. I forget which one, but he's like a major figure. I think he'd be like considered slightly higher ranked than like Armsmaster, where he leads a slightly more prestigious city, and he had had a racist tirade that was caught on camera. So this was like shortly after that, kind of. So it seems like he's trying to like this seems like a good time to heroic sacrifice himself. So he does, even though it would probably actually be more useful to have him on the battlefield for longer because Leviathan is specifically like picking off people from his group of the like defense capes, like people like Shielder, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. And also we got two more spellings, Eidolon and Eidolon.
Like
Uh,
yodeling.
so yeah, we got a lot of everybody can spell Eidolon their own way. Eidolon.
I don't. As long as you're saying idling.
Where were we? Here?
I think you're right here.
Here. Okay. The armband finally speaks after it. It's long hold on casualties. This time, instead of indicating the dead and injured, it rattles off a full list with no specifications, only losses. Notable names are Gallant, Knight, Crusader, Ballistic, Flashbang, Narwhal, and Tattletale. Vic said to me, "You might want to remind Quinn who to him who is who to him here." So do you remember these guys?
So Knight and Crusader, they're like part of like those racists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember them. I don't remember Narwhal at all, I'm not gonna lie.
Narwhal
Uh
covers herself in force fields. She's like a Canadian international like she's a hero on a team that they are not only like a team that helps Canada, but they go internationally to places that don't have people to help, and they like battle down parahuman warlords and stuff like that, like stuff that only other parahumans could fight through. You know what I mean? Um,
right. Okay.
and so like that's her job, and so like another big thing is like that they do the guild is to fight endbringers like whenever they can. Um, so she's a really important guild cape, and Dragon is also part of the guild. Um, and then Flashbang is that's Victoria and Amy's dad.
Oh,
I mean
okay.
Amy's adopted, but it's that's Mark. Um,
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then I guess Shielder's uncle, for example. Um, then Ballistic. Do you remember him?
Is he like a guy who like kind of like controls bullets or something? He can like kind of like weave them around.
No, he's one of the travelers. He's in Trickster's gang, and when he touches an object, he can like give it an impulse that fires it at like bullet speed. But he's firing like dumpsters and like concrete at uh, Leviathan, so he's
Oh,
able to, at least to some degree, push him around. Like kinetic force is not pointless, but the reason dropping the building on him as like a solo act with no like powers involved is because it's like the concussive damage itself just kind of pushes him around. The thing that he was getting damaged on is Narwhal shields that were like cutting and holding in place, and then he would get pushed through them more.
mm,
So, concussive force alone is very weak, but ballistics is powerful enough to combo with other stuff. Um,
okay.
and then Gallant is Victoria Glory Girl's boyfriend. Um, and he's like he was gonna take over the wards when Aegis leaves. So
And
it's a
then
whole
this
bunch of people.
Tattletale person, who was that
I've never
again?
heard of them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like people we know are getting knocked around.
Yeah, and these are like high profile people, obviously. Like Gallant. I mean, if he was gonna take over the wards, then
Two plus
hey.
four times five says 9-ish minutes ago you said Green Fire Guy was like Legend but worse. Isn't that true for basically every blaster cape? I actually don't think so, because I think a lot of their effects are not like just different forms of lasers or different fire. I think a lot of their effects probably are the kinds of things that you need to start damaging him, like things that kind of break reality in different ways. Like I mean, Flechette is here. Um, Flechette probably hits him. I mean, they don't like utilize it well, but probably hits him harder than anything else. Um, and we've also got like the chance that there's a weird power interaction that like negates something about his like nature.
Mm.
Um, so there's always a chance that like other kinds of powers might be able to work, but like things that are less abstract and more material probably aren't very powerful against Endbringers.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, just because I'm curious, what do you think? I mean, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
assume you just read these chapters.
Sure.
Like, what do you think would be like a very effective strategy against Leviathan, or
So
like who would
did
be like really
we?
strong against him?
So like, do I have the perspective of having read the Lisa chapter just beforehand or now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because with that perspective, I think that the strong stuff it's stuff like um Arms Master's coming at it from a different angle. He's using something that like tears apart matter rather than something that like superheats or something that like tears or something that like cuts or bludgeons, you know. Um
Mm. Kind of
so
like non-conventional methods.
yeah, probably Eidolon could do like I don't know, just like all sorts of weird effects because his power is so malleable. Do you remember what his power kind of is? They said in like a
I
previous
just call him
chapter.
kind of like a sorcerer kind of thing.
Well,
Like he's
his thing in particular is that his power switches around and has like three powers at a time that he can have out, and he theoretically has a pool of any types of powers, but he doesn't get to decide what it switches to. He's like random rolling over and over again for that power slot. Um, so he and it takes time to build up effectiveness once he has the power. So like he in different points in this fight displays the power to like superheat the water, turning it to mist. Maybe he's not heating it, maybe he's doing some other thing, but he turns the water to mist and then like he teleports a bunch of people to safety who are like massively injured, and he does all these like different kinds of things. We'll see him in like a much later fight in the book, like literally just flying around and punching people like he was Alexandria, because that's the powers he happens to have right then.
okay, interesting.
So he's always
He's
trying
a
to toggle through till he can find something useful.
he's just like RNG, and he just whatever he gets, that's what he gets.
Yeah.
That's
Vale
cool.
says Clock Blocker didn't do a ton of damage, but figuring out a way to use him effectively in a fight would be huge. Yeah, yeah. Like Clock Blocker's power, like it's not clear if like any given power is going to work on Leviathan because he's so rules breaky. But the fact that Clock Blocker's power was good enough to stop him fully for however long, like that's the kind of thing they're looking for is alternate ways to fight. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He came in clutch there at the end.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you read this one?
I don't think I did. I was playing in my own world, I guess.
It's okay.
The armband continues, but Taylor is in shock and confusion as she doesn't know what the armband means by losses. Is she dead? Why isn't the band directing her to the injured? She imagines Tattletale with an injury like some that she's seen already.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Um,
Rough.
Leviathan pulls himself out of the demolished building and starts up his bullshit again. Taylor decides she, like Leviathan, needs to pull herself up by her bootstraps, in Vic's words, and move on. She collects herself and very few bugs, reminding her that her power is sucking ass right now. Um, Leviathan suddenly dashes away from where Taylor is. And Vale says, "Time out, Leviathan, and set up. That is a method of to effectively contain the fight." Yeah, 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 for sure.
Yeah. And then Eidolon uses a power to teleport himself and the many, many bodies around them away. Taylor and the others begin chasing after Leviathan, and upon rounding a corner, finds herself in a cluster of capes very close to Leviathan. Miss Militia yells, "Fire in the hole!" and begins loading and shooting her gun. Taylor's briefly confused as to why she needs to load, but she realizes this is atypical ammunition. It eludes Taylor for a moment, but these are clearly bombs made by Bakuda, and luckily, it seems they had acquired her time bomb.
Leviathan's lower body is trapped in the time-slowing bubble. Though one of his legs is free, it slows down his water echo, but he himself seems hardly affected. He lashes his tail toward the crowd, grabs 3 of them, and throws them into the time bubble. Rip, Jotun, Dauntless, and Alabaster, now frozen in time. Um, and like Dauntless, I was really looking forward. Like Dauntless is so juicy from like the idea of like a hero that just keeps getting more powerful over time, and then like, oh, what's it gonna be like when he's crazy? And then he's just nope.
He just froze in time. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then just kind of lots of complicated fighting happens. Miss Militia out of commission, Fenya and Menya out of commission, Legend out of commission. Lots of big names there going down. It's not great.
Yeah. And Fenya and Menya seemed like, from our perspective as readers, like I definitely thought of them as physical, like crazy physical powerhouses, because like they get multiplicative strength as they get bigger. It's like the reverse of how things work in real life,
Mhm.
where like your body can't, like a big enough body kind of starts falling apart because it can't hold itself up. They're just the opposite of that. They're like super tough, can tank hits super well, and they just get murked like it's nothing. So yeah.
Uh,
um Greg said, I agree. I think you need to fundamentally change Leviathan's nature to defeat him. I recommend an American classic. Dump a bunch of tea in the harbor and wait for him to become T-Viathan.
now we got him.
Yeah. And then we'll
Now he
have
makes
all
an
the British
affirmative of tea.
fighting against him, too. Um,
Oh, there we go.
they are very close to Boston. Um, so
um,
where were
uh,
we? Do you want to keep reading here?
yeah, I'll read this. Leviathan grabs Shielder in his tail and starts running around. Laser Dream, his sister, shoots at Leviathan, and in return, Shielder is smacked against the edge of a building. The armband announces Shielder's deceased, and Laser Dream screams. Leviathan leaps toward the group that Taylor herself is in. His afterimage strikes the group, and Taylor is shoved back by the wave of water full of bodies. Her arm slams against the window, and she's hit with sharp pain.
Kaiser decides to do some one-on-one tussling with Leviathan. You can usually tell when Vic is talking about a fight because she says stuff like tussling and stuff a lot.
Yeah,
They're
like
just they're
Bird
just
Boy.
wrestling around. In the midst of a leap, Leviathan is suddenly frozen in place. And then, excerpt. It took me a second to realize what had happened. Leviathan hung frozen mid-pounce, and his emerging afterimage similarly stood there, frozen in time. In the midst of the afterimage was Clockblocker, half immersed in water. Someone get him out of there! He's gonna suffocate! I shouted. And then the addendum to this is Vic saying, ahem, many question marks. Snorted to try and clear his nose so he could keep breathing, but then he was left with the problem of needing to inhale. He couldn't do that without bringing bugs further into his airway, so he made the mistake of opening his mouth to breathe. When a mass of bugs forced themselves into his open mouth, he staggered and fell. I think he was gagging, but couldn't see or hear well enough from my vantage point to tell.
That was such a gross scene. I was like just thinking about that. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I just love that. Like Vic couldn't help but be like, Taylor.
Like, wait, hold on.
Vale says, it's fascinating the afterimage also froze. It means it's actually part of his body. Yeah, well, I think, so we know from later on that Clockblocker, oh my god, spoilies, he's not dead. That Clockblocker can extend his power through objects further into other stuff. Like that's how he can tag somebody's costume and get them inside them. But like I think that he's just in like overdrive clock blocker mode where his power can like extend even though he's already hitting like the biggest target that he could like feasibly hit, Leviathan, because he couldn't get in range to hit Behemoth ever.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, but yeah, so the out-of-town capes generally don't know how clock blockers' power works and have conflicting plans on what they should be doing. Several capes are still just firing away, not knowing that they can't damage Leviathan while frozen. Taylor can't use her own armband because her left arm is broken. Taylor reaches over for the arm of a nearby Moon Hero lady. Initially, she mistakes Taylor's intentions and tries to let Taylor guide her actions. Taylor gets her to stay still by snarling at her, then gets the message into the armband that they need to teleport her to save clocks.
Your boy Trickster appears, taking the place of the woman, and gives a word for the dead before swapping a corpse for clock blocker. Taylor is incensed by a lack of urgency in his actions, but Trickster's gotta be Trickster, you know. Some skeleton doctor lady starts working on clock blocker, and Taylor switches focus to Armsmaster giving battle orders to the group at large. He's saying that most of their defensive capes have been killed already. Leviathan seem to be focused on them so that when the waves come in, they'll, not be able to defend from it. Armsmaster wants to set up a dragnet and spread out their forces so they don't all get killed at once. Um, and Eidolon is going to the coastline to block the waves in lieu of having the defensive group be still alive. Armsmaster says the plan has reverted to stalling Leviathan out until Scion arrives. And I do want to point out that I think that Clock Blocker did something that other capes couldn't do, which is that he probably, when Leviathan is stuck inside the frozen state, is not bringing in the tsunami as hard, so he's not ramping up the fight during that portion. Because I'm pretty sure that is just part of his macro hydrokinesis at work. So if he's not there to actively do it, then he, like, even when he's knocked over and getting, like, kicked around, he's still doing that. But when he's clock
Yeah.
blockered, he ain't.
Yeah, he's just like completely frozen.
Yeah.
So final chapter thoughts. What you have any particular thoughts?
Well, I remembered how long this chapter is, and when I was, going through it, and I realized that this is worth the size of like 4 chapters from the very early book, which is kind of funny. I think these 2 chapters are nearly as they're like 80 minutes long essentially. So uh they're like a movie length. When people talk
Yeah.
about, I heard somebody say a worm movie once. They wanted to see a worm movie, and I was like, I don't even. You could make Arc 8 into a movie, but like the plot overall.
Like I don't know how you do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
um. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how that would work, but I guess it's a cool concept or whatever.
yeah. I mean, I'd
Um.
watch a worm anime, but a live action
Yeah,
show I
that'd be
think
kind of
would
cool.
be bad
Yeah.
because
Yeah. I think I agree
uh,
with that.
it would take so much CG, and it would like it, it'd be bad. It'd look really really
Yeah.
cool animated too.
Yeah. It would look sick animated. Yeah. When I was reading these chapters, because I like read them. I didn't listen to the audiobook, and I usually do, but I was like, I'll just read them this time because I saw like the time on the thing. I was like, damn, that looks pretty long, and I have a hard time focusing sometimes. So I was like, I'll just read it because I know I can focus if I do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I like just read them, and I might start reading more of them instead of just listening to the audiobook because I kind of enjoyed reading it. I
Yeah,
feel like I
yeah.
kind of miss like some nuance sometimes when I listen to the audiobook, just like of the writing.
Yeah,
But
there's like twofold things for it. Some of the early chapters have some like sort of accidental word swaps by the readers and stuff, but then also in addition to that, like if you just like lose focus for 10-15 seconds and you just miss a whole paragraph, then you're like, if you notice that you did that, you go back. But if you were really zoning out, maybe you don't even realize that it happened and then you just have lost that paragraph. So,
yeah, and then like someone brings it up, and I'm like, wait, when did that happen?
right, yeah, yeah. So I'm sure that that kind of thing could happen too. When I'm writing the docs, I definitely do a combination of both, where I'm definitely looking at the text, and then I'll like play a short portion, I'll think about it, and then I'll write while only using the text, because like it's harder for me to focus while it's like actually talking.
Yeah, yeah, same.
But they just kind of
Um,
force me to think about it in different ways, and I like that.
y- yeah, yeah, it's cool. And I kind of like the extra elements that the audiobook adds, where it kind of gives them all voices, because sometimes it's kind of hard for me. Like in my head, I make up their own voices, but then I listen to the audiobook, I'm like, oh, that actually fits a lot better than what I was thinking or whatever.
Right, and like the Worm audiobook is good but kind of shaky in a lot of places, but like the Ward audiobook done by like when Rain is reading and it's like really good.
Yeah.
Like these ones are read by Rain and it's like I think he's really good at it, but like he gets way better over time, and by the time Ward starts, he does all the mainline chapters and it's so good. So,
Did
yeah.
did like Wildbow like commission him to do it, or was it just kind of like
No, it was
a fan?
just a fan project that was okayed. And right now he is involved in a project that they're doing a full cast audiobook, and the third arc just came out just
Oh.
maybe a week or two ago. I can't quite remember when, but very recently. And I think they have finalized who they're gonna have for Arc 4, and they're gonna start recording and stuff. It's a very slow process for this one because they gotta align everything just right. But so far the stuff I listened to has been very good. So yeah.
Um,
But yeah, we can start in on the next chapter if you want.
okay, yeah, sure. This one, we kind of separated it where like I kind of did the first half and then you kind of did the second half.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of gonna be like a lot of me talking and then a lot of you talking for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, just as a heads up. Um, so yeah, Kaiser and Armsmaster were working hand in hand, gasp, trying to contain Leviathan. Kaiser creating a similar sort of trap to what he used on Lun, while Rune and another telekinetic were warping the metal around Leviathan's face and body, all Magneto-like. While Armsmaster was using the bombs they had acquired from Bakura and setting them up as proximity/time bombs, which Armmaster and the rest of the crew not even entirely sure what these bombs could do. Um,
It's true, and this is
and
this
so
is I think one of their most effective like strategies to use these like random effect bombs. Because like, what if the we find just the right thing, just the right frequency to where like instead of producing water, he just like becomes a fixed point in space or something.
yeah, yeah, that would be amazing. So yeah, and then like only about like 50 or so capes are left standing during this onslaught. Among them being Fenya, Menya, Classic Hook Wolf, Genesis, Aegis, and Manpower, who were the only ones who could realistically go toe to toe with Leviathan. And a new girl, is it Parian? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Parian.
Arian, a girl in like a sort of a stuffed animal costume. She had kind of constructed like a giant stuffed lion and a pig that were about on as tall as Leviathan's shoulders. Taylor, she was like uneasy about it because she was like, well, first of all, these are just giant stuffed animals, but also this girl was like, this is my first fight. And I was kind of thinking back to like Taylor's first fight with like Lun, and I was like, now not that Lun was like an easy fight by any means, but if this had been Taylor's first fight, I'm like, I can't imagine how things could have been
Right.
different, you know?
She kind of she does that thing where she forgets very easily that it took her like, I don't know, 3, 4 fights to kind of start getting comfortable, and then like she wasn't like that good until probably Arc 6. So
Yeah. And like, especially if this were her first fight, like, and she had like her bug power, she'd be like, well, this power is useless, like,
right,
you
right,
know?
yeah. What can I even do with Bug?
Um, exactly, right? And then Kid Win was setting up a barrage of cannon fire to release on the Leviathan the second he was free, kind of similar to how he was doing it at the bank heist. And here's a little quote I pulled was beyond these first few moments after Leviathan woke up, it would be anyone's guess. And I pulled that because I just kind of liked how it brought in sort of the whole uncertainty of the
Mm-hmm.
fights. And it's just kind of cool to because they don't know exactly how long Leviathan's gonna be frozen. They're just like he's frozen now. Eventually, he's not going to be, and then it's just gonna fucking like consume. Or
Right. And I feel like this fight is for the readers to like I think it's fairly effective. It worked on me at least of like having really high stakes, feeling like a lot's on the table, you know?
yeah, yeah. Which with how many they've already lost, like that's definitely very much driven home.
Right, right, yeah, yeah.
And then another quote I pulled was a huge part of me. It was from Taylor's perspective. A huge part of me wanted to just close my eyes and hope Leviathan didn't come, that I wouldn't have to deal with him. It would be nice to join the 350,000 other Brockton Bay residents that were trusting the heroes to handle things, find peace of sorts and surrender and helplessness. Except I couldn't. Um, so on that quote, I just kind of wrote that Taylor, unsurprisingly, was having doubts. She never really got into a fight of this scale where her power is practically useless, to someone like Leviathan. This is going to be a very tough fight for her, and she had no idea if she was even going to make it out alive. Since many people who I don't know if she considers this, but I would consider stronger, in quotes, stronger than Taylor have fallen
Right, right.
already.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but yeah, so Taylor kind of continues, and she's looking around for anything that she could use as cover or like an escape route, just in case. She needed sort of like a vantage point where she'd be out of sight, but also a spot where she could get behind cover in case Eidolon could not use sort of his little
Well,
whatever it
remember
is.
that he's not the magic one. Mirden is the
Oh,
staff
that's right.
guy.
Mirrodin's the magic
But
guy.
they're just hoping that Eidolon can pull something out of his theoretically endless bag of tricks.
Is it like actually endless, or does he have like 20 powers or something to pick from, or is it like?
There's a fuckload.
Oh, okay.
Like it's not like a numbered amount. And uh, he's been at it for like he's like one of the capes who's been active since the 90s. So he's and it's 2011 now. Um, and yeah, so he's still like he can just cycle through some ridiculous amount of powers, and like we say, it's not like anything. He has no real choice over the matter other than like move on from power or hold on to power.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. But yeah, and then Taylor, she even considered kind of finding like a fire escape that she could climb. But then she was like, well, last time I did that when I was fighting with Lung, not the greatest. So,
Right.
um, and then that was when she kind of found a spot that was supported by two pillars, which the book described as some sort of carport, exposed on three sides, so she wouldn't be able to stay there. But she was like, "Aha! I can keep like a little swarm of bugs there, whatever they could do, just in case."
Yeah.
Um, and then I pulled another quote here, which was, I'd been acutely aware of my bugs since the battle started, and for the second time I could remember. For the second time I could remember, I found my power was responding far more effectively as I called for them. My reach extended further, my bugs were fractionally more responsive.
Yeah. And
Again, kind of just taking note that her powers are stronger, but in this moment, she's like, I don't have time to like worry about that or care. Like, I just need to figure something out.
right, and like this situation is the second time. The only other time was in Arc 5 when she had felt like uh emotionally trapped by the situation at the school and like she didn't have a way forward and stuff. So feeling her sort of hopelessness here almost helps her power fire up, on all cylinders.
Yeah, and
Not
I
that she's
remember
like
like she
totally
like
hopeless or that's the full cause, but it's like they're linked.
yeah, because I even remember her like asking like Tattletale. She's like I felt like it felt like stronger And Taylor, she's like, well, she's like, I could look into it, but like, I kind of, they were like in the middle of something. I can't quite remember what it was, but she's like,
They were trying to set up for their multi-pronged attack on the ABB, and she was going into a possibly bomb-ridden area.
oh, okay, yeah, that's right. And yeah, Tato, she's
Um,
like, I could figure it out, but like, I got other things to like worry about.
yeah,
So
Vale says feeling powerless against an overwhelming foe is Taylor's thing. Bullies, lung, headache in bank, etc.
yeah, she can't catch a break.
Yeah.
um, Taylor, then she was struck with an idea. She grabbed kind of like 9 swarms that she had gathered in various places and kind of had them take human shapes, kind of in a way to deceive Leviathan. Would it be enough? Who knows? But she had to try. Uh, and then it was at that moment where she kind of felt a cold chill from above, and she had seen Eidolon kind of forming the puddles that Leviathan had created into sort of like glacier sheets. Um, and then I pulled this quote. It was, I could remember seeing on TV that they tried something like this a few years ago. A tinker using an ice engine, I think. I didn't know exactly how or why, but judging by the fact that they hadn't used the tactic again, I got the impression that it had turned out really badly. Um,
It might have
but
not gone the best, but also there's just probably a really good chance that whoever the hell that tinker was, they were not alive at the end of the battle.
yeah, very very good chance there. And so this was something I should have asked you about before we started, but I kind of was he like making the glaciers to kind of like stop the water, or just kind of like evaporate it, or like
I
kind of like what
think
was his
I think
goal?
it was like a multi thing. He could cut off the water's like momentum on the initial hit. He could cut off the water flow in both directions of like the ocean and the water constantly rushing in and out from underneath the feet of the capes, where like that helps Leviathan and hurts them. So I think it's like he's freezing, like with some ice power, he's using the water as a base to freeze like all the way from the ground and then all the way like up into the air a bunch.
Okay,
I would
okay, yeah, that
guess
makes
that's
sense.
kind of like,
Yeah,
and a lot of this is me interpreting on the fly, but like I feel like there's a lot of wiggle room in the books where you kind of have to just be like, I think this is what's happening.
yeah, because like when I was reading it, I was like, I thought maybe they were gonna try and use the glacier sheets as like way to block the water, but I was like, the Leviathan's strong enough, he could just a strong enough tidal wave is just gonna rip through it, and it'll be even more dangerous.
Yeah, and that
I
was
was like,
her
that
whole
doesn't make
thing.
sense.
Like, if it broke apart, but like maybe something about this specific iteration, because the powers are all different. Like every little iteration of a power is different. So maybe
Yeah,
this iteration of the ice power, he can hold it together more firmly with his mind, or something like that. Maybe he's like more confident in that. Maybe he's like really swinging for the fences, and he's just like, what else can I do? So it's like, there could be a lot of different reasons why that's happening.
yeah, okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Where was I? Oh, everyone was banking on Scion arriving, the gold skinned man who could take, excuse me, take down an Endbrainer. However, Scion is not in touch with the world. He is constantly saving people 24/7, 365 days a year, which brought up the very real possibility of him being too busy to realize an Endbrainer was currently fighting a whole squadron of heroes. Um, which I know they mentioned Scion at the beginning, but have we seen any more of him since then? I don't think so. Or
Scion
like
has
heard.
never appeared like on screen. He has been on the television in Danny's interlude, and that's it.
Okay, yeah, that's when I remember first hearing about him. Um, but okay, cool. So Taylor, she had finally decided upon her hiding spot, the carport. She had hoped the shadows were enough to keep her concealed and had some cover from any debris that might fall, as well as an escape route. The only issue being a tidal wave directly from Leviathan was going to hit her, but this would be her best bet. She gathered. Um, then again, Taylor's armband spoke. Manpower deceased. Aegis deceased. Leviathan was back up and going again. And then, so Taylor had realized that Leviathan had went up as Aegis was on aerial
And
support.
do you
In
remember
that
who
moment,
these two are?
Manpower and Aegis.
Yeah.
Aegis, he's really. Oh shit, I fucked up.
Just controls it.
Yeah. Aegis, he's someone really fucking big, like in like Arms Masters kind of group, right?
Yeah, he was the leader of the wards. So he was the team captain of the teenage heroes. Um, he was about to graduate to the protectorate, and like in the previous chapter, they were talking about like moving him and swapping him um to Boston, and then getting Weld as the team captain for Brockton Bay as part of the whole like restructuring thing. But he was
Mhm.
important. He was flying around at the bank robbery, and we saw that like no matter how much damage he took, he could always like rebuild himself with his healing and reinforce because he had like redundant body parts. Like he was physically fist fighting the two of the three dogs for a long period of the bank robbery.
Okay, yeah.
So he can get like torn apart and stuff and still just like keep going. When this first happened, I definitely thought to myself, I don't know, maybe his armband just got destroyed.
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah, and we've seen him
um,
in this fight, in the 8.3 chapter, fly up in maybe it wasn't 8.3, maybe it was the start of 8.4, but we've seen him up to this point fly in the way of when Leviathan grabbed a whole bunch of debris and flung it at the people, and like the parts of the debris that didn't hit Aegis and that like went around him, murked two people just by proxy. Um,
oh yeah.
and oh yeah, actually that was when Bastion got killed by Vista. So that's that part.
Okay, okay, yeah,
So
yeah,
he had
yeah.
like leapt out then. Anyway, so I thought it was
Um,
important. And Manpower is Fielder's father and Laser Dreams.
oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So Taylor had realized that Leviathan rather, had gone up, as Aegis was on aerial support, and in that moment she saw Fenya and Menya fighting him. Despite their large size, Fenya went down, and then shortly after, dead. Kidwin had shot a laser beam at Leviathan,
Yeah,
then
and it
went
was
higher to
his
stay out
thing
of
that he had
reach.
made for S class threats. So it's like practically tailor made for this fight. Biggest punch
The
you can get.
the Kidwin's like little laser beam.
Yeah. It was made for
Oh,
these like high intensity encounters, and he had brought it out to test at the bank when he really shouldn't have. But it's supposed to fight like lung upwards on the power scale.
okay, okay. Um, yeah, and then he kind of was trying to go higher up to stay out of reach. But then he had gotten smacked down, and then they heard on their little armband, Kidwin down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then yeah, once Taylor had seen Leviathan, she had seen the damage. His right shoulder was bloated. I think they said it was like 4 or 5 times like its normal size. He was bleeding profusely. There was like a hole through his stomach, and then a larger blackened wound across his neck, as well as a fifth of his face was missing. But despite all this damage, he did not seem to be suffering all that much. Crazy, crazy.
I forgot to note,
Uh,
Vale had said the next round of bad things that happened to Taylor. Bakuda, Lung Again, Night and Fog. This is like the ultimate version of all of the above. Um, Vale says the shoulder size is a Bakuda bomb reference. Yeah, it must be like that he got all
oh,
mangled and twisted by the bomb that she was going to use, the space warping bomb that she was going to use on Gru to torture him.
okay, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even catch that. I just kind of thought something happened.
Yeah.
um, um, and then yeah, Taylor noticed that Leviathan was holding Kaiser's upper torso, kind of like on his claw, and then sort of just tossed him aside. Sort of, kind of imagine just like those really strong villains like anime or something when they like grab someone, they're just kind of like lazily throw him to the side. That's just kind of what I'm imagining him like flicking him off his like claw.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, Greg
and
says,
yeah.
yes, don't be mistaken and think Kidwin did anything significant here. No, Kidwin didn't fire at the shoulder. He fired at the neck wound that Narwhal had created. So, anyway.
Okay, so that's why it was like kind of blackened around. Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay. It's all coming together now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so he kind of threw Kaiser's upper torso fucking around, and then his legs nowhere to be seen from Taylor's point of view. And she didn't like hear like a little blip or whatever from
How did
her
you feel
armband.
about this reveal when you were reading through? Were you kind of like, whoa? Because yeah, say whatever you're going to say.
When Kaiser went down,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was pretty surprised because he's been like kind of in like a lot of things we've seen with him.
See, I thought he was going to be their next, like, when I'm reading let me see. When I'm, busy reading 7.12 and or 7.11 or whatever chapter, when Coil shows Dinah, um, I'm like, okay, so he's going to set them on Kaiser next. So whatever happens, he's probably like a medium term, like, enemy that they're going to fight. And then, like, story expectations, tossed to the winds. Kaiser destroyed, power vacuum.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was pretty surprised because yeah, I definitely thought Kaiser was gonna be that reoccurring like like a Pokemon rival or like they're always kind of there for a hot minute. So I was very surprised to see him kind of go down and um he's like pretty powerful, so I was surprised.
Yeah, but
Like
the thing is, he's just like when it's like Leviathan, he's practically just a dude wearing full plate. Like,
right, yeah. So I mean it's not much different from anyone else to him,
yeah,
but um yeah, I wish they kind of explain like sort of what happened to him. I mean, we can infer just Leviathan got the better of him, whatever. But I just want to know like how he got like his his legs fucking separated from his torso.
I imagine that it's just the two hand just break the action figure in half by twisting, uh, kind of move.
Oh, like oh, that's rough to imagine.
They
um,
don't say that explicitly anywhere, but that's how I always thought of it because it's just like his armor would tear and then it would tear his insides. Um,
yeah,
so
damn, that's gross to think about, but yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of what I'm gonna see now.
yeah. But we do, yeah. Actually, you know what? For the contents of Arc 8, I am gonna fully hold back on any thing that's beyond 8.4 with
Okay,
you
yeah.
because you still have the interesting perspective. So.
Yeah, and they ain't done, so
Mhm.
um oh yeah, but her like armband had kind of just screen had gone black, but she was like, okay, whatever, like I don't have time to figure that out.
Mhm.
Um and then Leviathan had done a attack sort of in her general direction. Um and then Leviathan had shot another wave, a tidal wave. Taylor didn't know what to do, so she was like, I'm just gonna like remain still where she was. The tidal wave lifted up the van and sent it towards Leviathan. And then he kind of like punched through it with his fists and used his claw to like kind of rip it apart. Which I thought just when I was reading that, I was like, that's cool. Like just kind of how they like, I just like seen that in my head. Like it was just cool. Imagine like punching through it and then fucking ripping it in two.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and then he sort of flicked his tail again, and slashed the rain barrel and ripped through it. The this part, maybe I just like don't exactly get like where she's hiding, but it said like the water had dropped off the rooftop, kind of towards Taylor,
Mhm.
and it was coming at her like really fast. Um, so I
Let
maybe I was just confused like where she.
me look real quick.
Yeah, yeah. Let me get the exact quote because
Rain barrel.
rain barrel.
Um, let's see here. Leviathan rearing back in reaction to something as I legged it. So I think he's rearing back in reaction to like Arms Master showing up on the scene, but like being out of her view. And then so she's just sort of getting secondary water that's like flying at her. I cleared enough of ground that the angle of the hit didn't throw me straight into the side of the building. I was thrown and rolled on my side on top of my probably broken arm. So I'm guessing she did like a little leap. Her feet got knocked forward and then she like fell downward, side rolled. All very painful. But she's got a lot of adrenaline.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, that makes sense because I was trying to just like imagine in my head sort of like what was happening, and I was like, wait, so like where did the water come from? But yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
Um,
Vale commented a couple times. Vale said, I think the Bakuda bombs, when she was arrested by the PRT, basically took them and put them in a bunker for emergency S-class threat use. Miss Militia gets them and uses her power to fire them. There are tiny references to it in the fight, like the shoulder. I think there's pretty big references to it. She does the time bomb, which is definitely a Bakuda bomb, and then the one that's the gold sticky gooey stuff, which is also one of the ones we saw from the storage locker fight. So I think it's as far as I'm concerned, it's confirmed. Um,
yeah, we kind of already went over that, and then okay, yeah, I guess I'll just reread this one. But yeah, so Taylor was so weak at this point after the tidal wave, it kind of like crashed into her, tumbled over onto her probably broken arm, and she felt like puking. I think they even said like she kind of like pulled her mask down, and she was like trying to puke, but it was like her body sort of just trying to distract herself or something. Um,
mm-hmm.
and she couldn't like get to her feet, so she fell face first into some gross, nasty water. And eventually she was able to get up, but she said that she had like no idea sort of how long it really took her to get up.
Right, right. Taylor finally pulls herself together and is standing, stumbling around, but staying in the shadows. She doesn't know how long it took her to get up because she's dazed from the pain. She thinks it could be anywhere from 10 seconds to 2 minutes. Um, she gets to the corner of the building and she sees Armsmaster fighting Leviathan. 1v1. As
Oh
outlined
shit.
in this drawing that's happening in front of your eyes. As it gets speed drawn, speed drone.
Speed Druid.
Um, and then yeah, so Armsmaster is described as you will be able to see him here in a moment, dual wielding halberds and leaping around in power armor. He's pulling out all the stops. He's got grappling hooks, weird destruction effects, purple flamethrower, and even time stop chain. As Greg says, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um, Leviathan slapped his tail at Armsmaster's legs, and Armsmaster leaped over it, swiped out with the blurry halberd. It carved a chunk of Leviathan, it carved a chunk out of Leviathan. Not quite how I expected the sentence. Left a cloud of dust that the rain quickly drove down to the expanse of water beneath them. Armsmaster's new weapon that he showed Miss Militia in 7.x is able to do more damage to Leviathan than anything we've seen so far during the turning whole sections of him into dust. It's able to drive in about a third of the way into his leg. And then let's get the fully realized picture. Vale says, "I love the Leviathan take. Yeah, it's a really great Leviathan, and I think the Nano Thorn looks really cool around the halberd. Um,
Yeah. I really like how she did like his really swelled up like shoulder also.
yeah, yeah. So boop, 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 boop. Where was I? Yeah. So using all his tools, Armsmaster's able to dodge and move, and always just keep himself out of danger. No one else has been this successful at doing damage or staying in the fight. Leviathan is oozing in 6 places, and Arden's Master starts yelling at him. And we gotta remember, it's not just the stuff we see on screen here, it's like however long it took Taylor to stand up. The thing that knocked her over was collateral from him dodging the start of Armsmaster, like, running up on him.
Hmm.
Leviathan's oozing in 6 places, and Armsmaster starts yelling at him. He's really leaning into the cape showmanship for the sake of showmanship. I think that he can't help but revel in this moment. It feels like it's about to be the greatest accomplishment of his life to date, and even says at one point, "The others helped, slowing you down, stopping the waves, but this victory, this killing blow, is going to be mine." And the "mine" is italicized in the thing. It's really the hubris monologue of a lifetime.
Yeah, I really liked this part. This like whole section with Armsmaster. He went crazy.
Yep. Then in the monologue, he yells to what he thinks is an audience of one who can't understand him, all about how he's using his predictive battlefield program in tandem with past footage of Leviathan and what sounds like the Soliton radar from Metal Gear. He's like, it pings off all the surfaces so I know the full battlefield. And it's like, you have the Soliton radar? All of this is working to let Armsmaster know how Leviathan's moving around and where he's going to go, so he's always making the optimal move to stay alive and get in some cuts. Leviathan goes for some more tricks, but Armsmaster always stays just ahead of him. As he's wrapping up yelling about how the predictive program works, he gets in a really good dash and uses his iframes to pass right under Leviathan as he goes between the legs, and he, propelled by the grappling hook, he burns off a huge chunk of the first 10 feet of Leviathan's tail. So, he's really shredding him, all the places he can.
Yeah.
And now his monologue turns to the details on the weapon. It's nanotechnology that molecularly pulls things apart in an area.
And I love how Armsmaster's doing like the typical kind of just like, like any show or anything when they like use a power, they start like explaining their power. They're like, my thing lets me see the future 2 seconds faster or whatever, Like...
he really does do like an anime villain like monologue this whole time. It's like a Caleb City sketch. That's what it's like. Where it's like, you didn't know that I could move at the speed of sound. I've already been here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty silly, but he's just living this moment to the fullest.
And I'm just gonna read
Yeah.
from the chat real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Vale was saying, generally speaking, bugs do not do great combating tidal waves. Yeah. And then Greg says Taylor needs to work on her crab control for this fight. He probably Naruto runs everywhere during this fight. I hope he is.
Oh hell yeah! He's got his 2 arms behind his back, and the like halberds are like flailing behind him. He's like, whoa!
Yeah, it's like
and he's
against
like,
the ground.
He does the swipes, like they like swipe out first, and then their effects are seen a moment later. It's it's just the full anime treatment. Leviathan tries to run away, but Armsmaster busts out the clock blocker scanned time stop chain on his grappling hook. Once he reels himself over, he starts destroying Leviathan's face with the nanothorn. Armsmaster is only getting increasingly cocky over time, but admittedly, right now he's pretty badass. He's spinning and leaping and slashing endlessly. Whenever he needs to, he's using one of his little gadgets to get away. Like he'll fire off a huge burst of purple flame to destroy like an after image water echo that is going to hit him. Stuff like that. And he's always dragging himself around the battlefield. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, very like Attack on Titan-esque to me.
Yeah, it feels like Attack on Titan stole this fight as its inspiration. Because he's like going around a thing that if it hits him once will kill him immediately, and he's like literally like slashing it from all angles, and it has like super healing just like those guys do, and he's like running off all the little parts of him. Like he takes a leap off his head at one point. He goes between his legs, like he's doing all the things.
Yeah.
Attack on Titan's just a ripoff of Worm.
I knew it.
Um. Arms, let's see here. Armsmaster shouts one out about how he's going to take Leviathan's head, and then Leviathan stands up, feels his face and his neck, and at this point Taylor reflects for a moment on the idea that there's more blood loss than body volume. She's like, what is going on? Leviathan stops moving around, and Armsmaster thinks that he's stalling to wait for another tsunami. Then he starts to leap in, halberds ablazing. Taylor's doing all she can to not distract Armsmaster or get Leviathan's attention and throw things off. Vale jokingly, I think, says, OMG, Attack on Titan spoilers. How could you?
Oh no, they kill Titans in Attack on Titan? I'm sorry.
After a 10-second combo that includes a backflip, another escape attempt by Leviathan is foiled with the grappling hook plus Shadow of Colossus move where he runs on his head. Leviathan's finally showing some injury, leaping, then needing to use a hand to stop from falling over on the landing. And Armsmaster's grappling hooks to follow. Then something's suddenly thrown Armsmaster's rhythm off, and he breaks off the attack, landing. And after a moment, he's messing with his visor to like see what's up with the program, and Leviathan unleashes an attack that the computer couldn't predict.
How could this happen?
Exactly. And then Vale says about the spoilers, even more. Why? The water from the storm sewers explodes upwards, destroying the street, and hesitating only for a moment, Armsmaster goes all in. Like, you see him stop, and then he's like, I guess I'm doing this. And then he throws the time stop grappling hook halberd to freeze the onrush of water so that he can parkour off the water toward Leviathan, not away, fast enough and then fast enough to throw off his timing, like, even compared to everything else. Leviathan reaches up and grabs the Nanothorn halberd by the Nanothorn, and he just, like, lets it like, dusts part of his hand, I'm sure, but he lets it drive into the dense part of his palm, and it gets stuck there, and, Taylor realizes, like, this is the moment to act, and she sends in all 3 swarm clones at once. Leviathan seems to decide not to kill Armsmaster, picks him up, slowly pulls off his left arm, and then just leaves him behind. Standing up, Leviathan is no longer showing any signs of being hurt like he was displaying to Armsmaster during the fight. He's still oozing ridiculous amounts of ichor, but he doesn't seem to mind. He's all good. With a lash of his tail, he destroys 2 of the swarm clones, but a third one finally makes it up to him and kind of dissolves into the bugs, and then Taylor gets the bugs in as deep as they can go. She's not able to eat him from the inside like she wanted to, because as we know, he's denser and denser, but she's able to sense his position, which is super, super useful.
Yeah, and I remember reading the chapter. It said like something about like it's like equivalent of like the bugs like biting into like steel, pretty much. She was like, this is not doing anything.
Right, yeah. Yep. Leviathan turns west and leaves inland at full speed. Taylor runs to Armsmaster. You! He groaned. His left arm was gone at the shoulder, torn out of the socket. Blood poured from the wound. You're dead! Hey, you're not making any sense. He killed you. She tells him she's going to try to find his armband because hers isn't working. Taylor finds the arm with the Nanothorn, nearly losing a hand touching the effect. She manages to move the arm and the halberd over to Armsmaster and tries to like wake him up, get him up, but he's in shock. And Taylor gets the halberd with the nanothorn out of the grip of the lost arm and uses the armband to relay messages. First, she lets them know that Armsmaster is down, then where she saw Leviathan go, and then they pick up on the fact that, she senses him changing direction and mentions that he changed direction, and they ask if she can track Leviathan, and that's when she says she can, but she can't fly, and they send a flyer to grab her and move her around the battlefield. And then the last little bit is, there was only silence after that. Teeth clenched, shivering. I pressed my good hand as hard as I could manage against the ragged mess of Armsmaster's shoulder, trying to slow the blood loss. So yeah.
Damn.
Damn, son, now he's Armmaster.
Now it's just Armmaster. So what did you think when you first read this chapter?
I thought this was the craziest shit that had ever happened, ever.
I feel the same.
This is like such a ramp up. Like the last chapter and this one are like so crazy, and like the next chapter does not disappoint as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, because like he's still up and going. Like,
yeah, he's
really
running
curious.
around. So
yeah, yeah, because like who's even like left really at this point? Like,
not
counting.
There's tons of people left. We got ones that I can think of from the next chapter, like Parian, Hookwolf, Laser Dream, Lady Photon. I think that they've gotten Ballistic back in the fight, even though he was downed earlier. There are people who come back because they get healed by Amy. We got Strider, we got the Teleporter, we got Eidolon, we got Mirrodin, we've got, I'm sure there's tons of them. I'm just not thinking of all of them.
Yeah.
Trickster, Vale says it's amazing how short these chapters are. They feel like hours of tension reading, and they're actually quick. They're pretty quick, but they are 80 minutes long, the two of them combined. That's not nothing.
Yeah, they're like they're like long for like kind of. It's like a lot happens in the section.
Yeah, I still feel like a lot happens in a short span of time in terms of like it is economic with what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's still a lot of people left. What you got to realize is they had like 200-ish people to start, and a lot of them spread to different areas and stuff. Like when they were doing that Dragnet, so they're all over the place, and they're like trying to like use Taylor to hone in on his position and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, Chevalier's still up. He's a badass. But anyway.
Yeah, dude, I can't wait for Hookwolf to use his little separate arm piece.
To turn into a wolf and to have a little human hand.
It's the dumbest shit I've ever said, dude.
No, it's beautiful.
It's funny, but now when I think back on it, I'm just like, man, I really said that. And I was like, yeah, that's his power.
That was the greatest moment on the podcast so far, or the stream or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I can't wait for you to read the next couple chapters, and then like the ones you're coming back in on, you're going to be at 8.7 and 8.8, so you'll see how the you'll see how more of the fight plays out before you're actually back on the cast or the stream or whatever. I don't know why, but my brain always says this is a podcast when it's not.
Like whenever I'm explaining it to people, like I kind of like I say like podcast at first. I'm like, well, it's not, but it's like
yeah. But yeah, these two chapters were pretty mind blowing because even compared to like 8.2, and I heard them all in sequence, so there was no stop. It was just like we were still in the car listening. I call it a podcast. Why? That's a good point, Vale. It's a podcast if we say it's a podcast.
That is true.
That's fair. Um, I think people usually just kind of differentiate a stream because like we're talking to people and messages and stuff. Um, but regardless, we were listening to these like back to back to back, and it was just like the most compelling shit in a book that I had ever listened to.
Yeah, yeah, and like it's hard for books to like grab my attention sometimes, but I mean, obviously this book as a whole has grabbed my attention, but this chapter especially, I was just like, because I was like, oh, I'll read like the 8.3. I was like, then I'll like take like 30 minutes and read 8.4. But I read 8.3. I was like, nope, just gonna go directly into 8.4 now.
And yeah, while it's not all as high intensity as this stuff, I feel like even the lower stakes fights really work later on, and I feel like Wildbow only gets like better and better at writing the fights. And if you like how this one went, like I feel like some of the later ones are just like phenomenal, you know?
Yeah,
So, um so there's still a mountaintop to be reached. But
wonderful.
yeah, I think we can move on to characters though.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I wrote a couple things for different people. We don't have to read all the quotes, but I thought some of them were good to pull out like their powers or whatever. So Taylor, she sees a bunch of traumatizing ultraviolence here. And the thing I pulled out was there was a leg, half floating, weighted down on one end by a metal boot on the foot. Someone in a leather costume lay on their back, barely conscious, bleeding from a gash that had opened from their left hip to the right shoulder. A cloud of blood spilling out in the filthy water that came up halfway to our knees, an inky black color in the gloom. And I thought that's some pretty evocative work there,
Yeah.
Wildman.
And I didn't like pull any quotes for Armsmaster, and I kind of pretty much already said sort of what I wrote here, but just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
reiterate. He was kind of super cocky, doing this typical like, oh, my wonderful powers and my time stopping is too strong for you. But it was really cool to see Arm Master, as I'm gonna call him now.
You're
It was
that
cool to see
arms man.
you're that arm man, right?
Well, that's a line from later in the book. Somebody goes, "You're that," or she goes, "I know you. You're that arms man," and it's just like so
Yes.
fucking funny to me.
But yeah, it was really cool to see Armsmaster kind of go super off in this chapter. And then I didn't write this, but very interesting how Leviathan kind of just slowly tore one of his arms off and then left him. I was like, okay, like something's going on there, but I'm not sure what.
Maybe he was like a worthy opponent.
I hope so.
I don't really think that's what it was, but I don't want to
Yeah, me
explain
either, but
because I do think I know, but I don't want to get into it.
yeah, yeah.
But uh, Laser Dream, and it's funny because that's one of the things that like Vic was saying last week is one of the key like missing pieces from her understanding of the story right now is like she still doesn't understand the Endbringers, um, and she's like almost halfway through Ward, so
Oh, really?
yeah. But Laser Dream though, I pulled the quote when Shielder had died. Shielder deceased. CD6. Laser Dream's ragged scream was like something distant, something I was barely aware of because Leviathan was landing back in the area where the two alleys met. And then that's probably the main. But yeah, she's just it's just her brother gets totally murderized right in front of her.
Yeah, and yeah, that's not great. Not great at all.
Yeah, and then I'll put a little stamp on here for we should talk about Lisa, even though I didn't pull anything out about her. Um, Lisa, um, is she dead? Who could even
Who
know?
knows?
Um,
My guess is that she's not, only because like plot. But in terms of like, if I had seen this, I'd be, or I guess she didn't even like see anything with Lisa, huh? She just kind of, she just heard that she died.
she heard that she was among the losses where they didn't say downed or deceased, And then we saw at the end of 8.x that her last moment is boop 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 that she's on the rooftop, and Leviathan raised one claw in Tattletale's general direction. The water on the roof shifted, surged toward Tattletale in an isolated wave as tall as she was, lifting her, pushing at her. The sting of the spray and the salt of the water blinded her. There was a brief, dizzying moment where she realized she couldn't tell which way was up. She realized she was falling. Stupid. The thought was an accusation, biting, directed wholly at herself. And that's the last moment we get with her in the present, is that Leviathan focused on her specifically.
Yeesh.
So, yeah.
Well, she might be dead then.
And then who else appears in these chapters who we can think of as more than just their power set? Because I'm thinking, Trickster. Gotta have one for Trickster. Yeah. Trickster's part is great. He's just like, he's a cape to the end, I think. I mean, yeah, he's so great. Teleports in, says some
he's so
shit.
Cool.
Yeah, he's so cool. And then he saves Clockblocker.
Yeah, I guess. Well, Clockblocker. I guess there's not really much to add for him. It was just his power.
As a bit of trivia, we get that moon cape reused as someone in Ward later on, or maybe they always had a bit more of an expanded backstory. But I feel like it's more the other way around of like, oh, this person could have been from the corporate team, and she's like a person who was on one of these corporate teams who went to fight the Endbringer. So yeah.
Huh.
But she becomes an actual important character who has like a cool interlude and stuff.
That's cool.
Powers, knowledge, and world building. We got Leviathan. A billion infinite things happen in these chapters, but I added, because I thought this was kind of like important tonally for how the fight feels. Leviathan's echo added surprising quantities of water to the battlefield. Every step and movement he made, he filled the space he'd just left with water. How much water did it take to displace something as big as he was? However much it was, he created something like 3 times that amount when he took a single step forward. When you accounted for the space his body moved through, a hard amount to eyeball, because it had the same momentum his movements had, and some of it crossed great distances as he lunged and clawed his way through the front line of capes. Yeah.
So with his after image, is it kind of like a tracer of himself and then it turns into water, or is it just like water?
It's like just water, but imagine that it's like if he stands still, there's water kind of gushing below him and like out of him, if there's even like slight movement, and then when he like stems, like if he rushes forward, it rushes with the momentum he had, so he can stop and like launch a thing in front of him as an attack, or he can just like slow walk and have like, you know, buckets and buckets of water falling behind him, which he can then use to like essentially run on by like moving, because his hydrokinesis is a lot more nuanced than they talk about, I think. And it's basically what allows him to be so fast. He's able to constantly push on the water that's coming out of his body to speed up his movements. So,
okay.
Yeah. And then this other part I pulled out was Leviathan didn't make noise. I kept expecting a roar or hiss or something, but Leviathan was dead silent. I somehow imagined a victorious howl as he broke through the barrier, crouched, and lunged into the crowd. So yeah, he's like a fucking freaky motherfucker.
Leviathan's so cool.
He's so cool.
He's so cool.
We gotta stop. I can't help when I'm talking to you, but do that. So
I think we literally always do it.
Yeah. Then do you want to read this legend thing?
Yeah, I'll give you a little break. Is this just a quote?
Yeah, this that's why I bolded it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Legend fired a salvo of lasers at Leviathan, and the beams turned at right angles to strike Leviathan in precise areas, knocking his feet from under him, slamming him down to the road, catching him under the chin. Leviathan raised a hand, and a geyser of water rose to block more incoming lasers. Legend's lasers simply turned at angles to circle around Leviathan, strike the Endbrainer from behind. They left Leviathan so hot that his flesh glowed a yellow-orange around the areas they struck him.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just to jump down, Vale said, I think this section is where Wildbow hits his stride. He keeps improving and expanding his repertoire over time, of course, but this is where he really shows he is a master storyteller. Yeah. He kind of gets his first big crazy fight. The
Yeah.
1 in 7 was kind of like a test run for this that didn't go so great, but then this one worked.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, just because he had to totally rewrite. That's like one of the only chapters he had to like full wholesale rewrite. Fight on was the 7 point whatever when they enter the big grand melee of racists and heroes.
Oh. Why do you have to rewrite it?
I just wasn't like coherent the first time. I guess he was
Uh,
like on a trip or something, so it was like a whole bad timing on top of everything else.
mm.
Um, Yeah, yeah, Vale. If you read the comments on the Arc 7 chapters, there's like that's the only reason I know about it is because they kind of talk about that. And so I might not be getting all the details exactly right, but it sounded like a huge chunk of the chapter at least was rewritten to be more like mentally trackable or whatever. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I wanted to, yeah, Legend's power is crazy. I they don't say it here exactly, but when he zooms around in like laser form, he kind of builds up um power to fire. So like part of what he does is like zoom around in a circle really fast to build up energy, then just like pelt pelt pelt, then zoom, and so he like alternates between these two things to keep himself going. And they talk about it in his uh, chapter later, but like his power is reactive to where his body will defensively turn into a laser when it's being struck by like something physical, and that's pretty fucking cool.
Oh.
Um, that's why defensively he's like one of the hardest to kill capes because like you have to hit him with something that like scatters him as energy. So like no traditional methods would kill him, basically.
You can't just like walk up and stab him.
Right, that'd be like almost useless. So he'd just become a
Interesting.
laser and laser you.
Just
So,
pew.
yeah. So the Alexandria Dragon moment. We get to see this through Lisa's perspective in 8.x, then Taylor's in this next chapter, 8.3. We see how Taylor is missing what's happening because she's retreating, and because she's on the ground, she doesn't have a good angle to see Alexandria get grabbed by the tail, etc. And if you want to read that.
Yeah. A series of explosions and a massive collision marked Dragon firing a full salvo of missiles and entering close quarters combat with Leviathan. Alexandria was gone. No, wait. She was rising from the water, where Leviathan had been holding her down. Standing, staggering, falling again. Had he been drowning her? Dragon began breathing out a stream of what might have been plasma in Leviathan's face. From his increased struggles and frenetic clawing at her, I gathered he didn't like it. Still, it was doing surprisingly little damage to him. Leviathan found a point to get a solid grip on Dragon's armor and tore off a plate. His next swipe took off another, and it careened a good 20 feet before landing with a heavy splash, close enough to me that I was caught in the spray.
Yeah, so this is also part of why I don't think Greenfire was doing much, because like Taylor doesn't think the plasma did much. Um,
Yeah, so what really was Green Man doing? Does Green
right.
Man ever come back, or is he a one-off?
He's a one-off. We never learn his name or anything. Um,
Interesting.
so this was something that I think this works perfectly well as a description if we never got the Lisa chapter, but for Taylor, this was a relatively quick, like 3 paragraph event that she's, and like, even though she's nearly hit by like the fallout of it, but from Lisa's perspective, because she's focused in on trying to gain as many like details, it not only lasts about 5 paragraphs for the dragon interaction. This is also what leads her down the path that lets her know about the layered density of Leviathan, which is maybe the most important thing she finds out in the whole like battle. The next most important being the idea that Leviathan was never human. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, like just the different ways that the two of them are viewing the fight, and like obviously Tattletale is going to be focused on super different stuff, but we just get a great example of that here.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool how they wrote that. How he wrote that.
Yeah, yeah. And then if you want to grab this part of Miss Militia, I think this is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, I liked this. Miss Militia had a bazooka as long as she was tall and was firing a series of warheads into Leviathan. She wasn't reloading either. Between shots, the weapon crackled with energy, fresh ammunition loaded into the chamber by her power. One projectile fired off each second. Just like
Yeah.
imagine that, just like choo, choo, choo.
This is again another Metal Gear Solid power where you quick unequip and quick equip a gun to have it go from empty to full, and you do it with, say, the Stinger missile launcher in 2 or the RPG in 3. Who knows? Um,
What I'm gathering is this entire chapter was based off Metal Gear
Metal Gear
Solid.
Solid, exactly. It's all a ripoff. And thusly, Attack on Titan was a ripoff of Metal Gear Solid 3.
They're just like each other.
Yep. And then the Mirrodin quote that I pulled that I thought was really good was, okay, I could almost buy the wizard angle seeing that. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
And then this I thought was pretty important. I mean, you already pulled it out. It was the stuff about her bugs being more responsive. I thought that was important to note, and I wasn't sure. You know, at the time I had pulled this, I hadn't read your whole thing, so kind of just reiterating that. But yeah. Do you have any more world building or powers, anything like that you want to pull out?
More like world destroying,
Whoa.
but
Yeah.
I don't think so because I mean this fight was yeah I mean it was just a lot of powers and just Leviathan, so not really a whole lot of world building for at least I didn't catch any.
I think
Um,
that from my perspective, the world there's good world building just in the fact that there are so many capes that like most of these people they describe, like Greenfire guy or like Skullface or like the woman who was the skeleton looking doctor, or like all these people, we never hear from these people again. They're not really like characters, but like it is a big world where things are happening off screen, you know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and like just the size and scale and destruction of this fight, it like matches up with what we've been led to expect in terms of like this is supposed to be this like really scary threat, has killed millions of people, can like fight entire hero teams and like just kill them off like in droves, and then he does.
yeah.
Because like I don't know, like not to just be a person who endlessly shits on Marvel or whatever, but like in the final battle of the one where they bring everybody else back from the past and they bring them back alive, from that one, like all of the heroes fight and only Tony Stark dies. And there's so many dumb moments, and there are so many weak heroes who would just easily be like murked by one of those aliens. It's like the whole thing in that old DC like Justice League thing where it's like, be careful, Aquaman, they're stronger than you. And they're talking
Yeah.
about like the baseline mooks of the enemy's force. It's just like he's fucked.
Yeah, it's like how did Captain America survive? Like that's just a guy. Like a guy who's like
Right, and
improved a little bit.
he like punches the guy who can punch out Thor. It's just like the power levels make no sense, and like only one
Yeah.
guy dies, and like it's just exclusively story stakes and no like
Steak.
high stakes from like setting, I guess. And like when I
Yeah.
say story stakes, like they're obviously story stakes here too, but it's just like there's only the one narratively like easy conclusion in the more basic works.
Hmm.
Whereas I mean this, they're like fucking we built up Kaiser, fuck Kaiser.
Nah, he's dead.
That guy's dead, motherfuckers. Um, it almost makes me think of someone who's got like a very angry view of media creation. So, but
Yeah.
it's fun. Vale says it's like comparing Harry Potter to Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Vale says it's a different purpose though. Marvel is meant to be heroic fantasy, with the reader inserts themselves into the story. Worm is reconstruction, deconstruction, where the world is real. Um, yeah, yeah.
That's a good
I
way to
mean,
put it.
you're right. I just, I'm more inclined for these kinds of stories because they also have better character stakes. So like, and I know that that's more of a quality issue, not like a uh anything else per se. Like that you can have like the character fantasy, like the hero fantasy thing, and have like really good writing. I just think that the other superhero media, not even one specific one, just most of it falls short.
Yeah.
So
Um, what was I gonna say?
yeah. All you're really saying is that it's different by intent. Yeah. Not by mistake that Marvel does that for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
We can move on to the audience participation question, which I guess maybe you answer first. It is which flying cape in attendance to this fight would you most want to see flying Skitter around next chapter?
Hmm. Well, Aegis, he's gone, right?
Yeah,
He like,
yeah,
yeah. Well, not him then.
yeah.
uh,
It would be funny if it was him because he flies around really slow. So like they'd just be like really slowly, like bumblebeing around the battlefield instead of like flying, like super
yeah.
fast. It would be very silly, and they would probably get murked. Um, so
Uh,
not Aegis, but we got some options. Mirrodin floats around. That could be funny if
that could be cool.
he like uses his staff to float her.
Yeah,
Um,
like a little like cloud or something beneath her.
yeah. That'd be hilarious. I would love that. She's like all dragon balling around. She's got
Yeah,
the
yeah,
yeah,
on the Nimbus. Yeah.
exactly. Vale says, I will
um.
also say almost all fantasy and sci-fi is superhero fiction. The existence of a magic system and the main character's involvement with it is a superpower. Yep. Sherlock Holmes is a superhero. John Wick is a superhero, etc., etc. Okay, yeah. So even in the more basic examples, yeah, that's
Yeah.
basically true. They just don't get to control bugs with their mind.
Yeah. Not yet, at least.
Well, maybe
John Wick
Sherlock can.
10 though. Yeah, I mean probably he'll be like discombobulate.
That's what he says to get them to dismiss. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's really funny to me. Um. Okay, so do you got any
Okay.
more answers for who you think would be funny?
Who else can fly that
It
we
doesn't
still
have to be
have?
just because it's funny. I just happen to think that's the best way.
No, yeah, I mean that does sound pretty funny. Like can Eidolon can fly, can he?
Oh yeah,
Might be kind of cool because like who knows what his power is gonna be when by the time he picks her up, you know?
yeah. That could be cool. That could be cool. I think it would be funny if it was Victoria because she hates her.
Oh yeah, that would actually be great. He'd be like, ah, great.
Then let's see what we got in our answer section over here from Vale. There just aren't that many. It's funny to think about it. I initially thought dragon and stick with that, but there just aren't a lot to choose from. Dragon to Taylor, or Dragon Arrow. Taylor would be secondary powered flying unit. Dragon can communicate through and control. She would use the conversation to find out all she can about this new villain at first, but then they somehow become friends. BFF Dragon keeps trying to get Taylor to stop being a villain. Taylor doesn't actually believe she is one, and now also has random mechs joining her when any conflict goes badly. And then said, I can see an anime sequence where Taylor is in a fight with, let's say, some of Hookwolf's folks, and in the shadowy background of the shot, there's a dragon mech peeking around a corner, just while trying to be inconspicuous, making sure she's okay. All right, so this wasn't the question, but it is my answer. Okay, is a pretty good answer. Although I will say, dragon already taken out of the fight.
Dead.
Dude. Let me think. So my answer, I think Eidolon would be really funny. Alexandria would be like the one that I think is the funniest. I think this answer up here I think is also from 2 plus 4 times 5 to the question, because he put the answer when I had asked it aloud rather than waiting for me to post it, which is perfectly all right. Alexandria, because they both have dark gray costumes. I think it would be incredibly funny for Alexandria to be the one flying her around.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. So funny, but cool.
Yeah, well, there's just a lot of reasons, both that have happened up to now and because of things that will happen later. Vale says, Dragon is my answer. I could have done it shorter. Greg says, what she really needs is Amy to make her a big flying bug, but nah, that would never happen. Yeah. All right, so I think we've come to the end of that audience participation section. I wanted to present the question for next week, which is, let's talk about the reveal at the end of 8.6! Exclamation point. And so that's got spoilers inherent to it, so I didn't even ask the full question. But when you read the chapter, you'll be like, okay, it's obvious what was being referred to.
That one, got it.
Yeah. Taylor gets picked up by Alexandria. Taylor, I have your lunchbox and underwear set. Nah. Vale, she's got the underwear set for Arms Master.
See, now that's just not gonna work.
Yeah. She's not gonna lie to Alexandria like that.
Yeah.
Alexandria would cold read the lie straight through her mask. She'd be like, I can tell that you actually have Arms Master's underwear.
So you like Arms Master, not me.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any... I'm trying to think of any funny questions I can ask you about, what do you think is going to happen next? How does this fight resolve, Quinn?
How does it resolve? I feel like Tattletale is not... I mean, we don't know that she's dead, but I feel like she's not dead. She's gonna kind of come through, and she's gonna relay to Taylor sort of what they need to do. And then... See, I don't know, because, like, my brain is thinking, like, two different ways. Like, I'm thinking, like, Tattletale's gonna come back and, like, kind of help Taylor out and kind of show her, like, what she should do. Or I'm thinking Scion is maybe gonna finally make an appearance and just fucking beat this guy into next Sunday. But I kind of feel like it's gonna be Tattletale is not dead, and she's gonna find Taylor and, like, kind of, like, guide her. Maybe not necessarily Taylor, but she's gonna go through Taylor first.
Right. Interesting.
What was your thought when you first read it of kind of what was going to happen?
It was hard to say. I mean, I know just in the short term, they're gonna pick her up and use her as like a little homing device. But it's like, it's kind of like what you were saying. A lot of these people have already been knocked out. They do have a lot of people left, but they're spread out. They had several minutes of reprieve, because as much shit as people always give Arms Master, they're always like, we got too cocky and blah blah blah, but it's like he did 1v1 for like 5 straight minutes or something insane.
Yeah.
So they were all bought a chance to get back on their feet and for people to get moved around the battlefield and stuff. So um, yeah, I was like, I don't know what they're gonna do because like if the attack that Armsmaster was using wasn't enough, like what are they? How are they gonna beat him?
Yeah, like if he couldn't do it after like doing those stunts, I'm
After
like,
doing the
I
most.
don't know. It's like I don't know, dude. Like, good luck.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Uh,
something Vale said was he says I love that Quinn, that's me, is reading along the same pace as the official international podcast.
thus implying that that's what this is. Yes,
The official international podcast.
exactly.
Yeah, I like reading it kind of slow like this because like I'm not a great reader, like so I can get burnt out like really easily too. So I definitely prefer to like read it like this because it's just much easier for my brain.
Yeah, and I mean we
Um,
we only get the freshest takes, so.
yeah, the freshest and the hottest.
Mm-hmm. I think we're gonna wrap up there. Thank you very much, Quinn, for being on this week and for working on the doc with me. If do you want to say anything else before I start up the music and read the links?
I don't think so. Just want to thank Vale and Greg and 2 + 4 × 5 briefly for showing.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Thank all three of you for being in the chat.
yeah, and I think that's it for me.
Cool, cool. Vale says the serious part is you reading along at the pace is fantastic and perfect. You are international though. Costa Rica in the house.
That is
I
true.
technically correct. I've also had one Canadian listener as well, so nailing it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, cause Scarlett was in a
Scarlet? Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, one of the early ones, but not that we've had too many repeat visits. But what are you gonna do? Um,
Yeah.
all right, I'm starting that music, and to sort of outro with the links, we've got the opening and ending music for this arc is A Strong Force, the Ulgonsah Witches. Odd name, but it's by CO.AG Music. I really like the way that you could hear the sort of rumbling thunderstorm in the background. It felt perfect when I was reading 8.1 and 2.
Mm.
The Discord server link can be found in the description of the streams as well as the channel description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow, and the full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. There's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Anyway, thank you guys. Goodbye, everyone. Ending the stream.